continue to treat us this way. And so you've got immigrant communities that are saying, hold on a second. We have claims here too. And from my perspective, and perhaps the perspective of most of the people in this room, because probably otherwise you wouldn't have come, this is all for the good. But what it does do is it represents an upending of some of the old status and hierarchies and structures that used to exist. And that is confusing to a lot of people. And that's not unique to the United States or Canada or Great Britain. I mean, I think one could argue that a lot of the anger and confusion in places like the Middle East had to do with the traditional societies suddenly being assaulted in their minds by all these new ways of thinking and doing. And so there's a pushback against them. So I guess you combine all that, and I think what it comes down to is people aren't sure, who am I supposed to be? What am I supposed to do? If you're a man right now, and it's been interesting reading a lot of articles lately about how, in the United States at least, a lot of young men, they don't know what does it mean to be a man. Other than, if you're not a jock, is it just physical? What does it mean in terms of having, is compassion manly, or is it not? Is it, how am I supposed to behave? You see a lot of teenage boys being confused about that. Well, and then you see a lot of grown men, obviously, confused about that as well. All these things, I think, are unsettling to people. And when people are unsettled, they're more vulnerable to some of the issues that you mentioned. Now, last point I'd make on this is the traditional ways in which people dealt with these anxieties involved religion, community, associations, what are called a lot of mediating institutions, the church,
even connection to the land.
Neighborhood organizations, whatever it was that rooted you. Mm-hmm. And I think what that's been replaced by is these pretty flimsy, fragile relationships on our phones, and a lack of real community, and a lack of purpose and meaning and connection, and so people feeling isolated, and virtual. The number of followers you have is not the same as having some friends who you can count on and spend time with. So, my sense is that the way we're going to solve this is both by looking at the underlying economics that are making people feel insecure, but it's also going to be, how do we remake new versions of those institutions, organizations, affiliations that gave us a sense of connection with others, gave us a sense of something outside of ourselves. And in some cases it may be, religions reforming themselves so that they speak more directly to today's realities and young people, but capture eternal truths. It's new ways of organizing communities so that they feel empowered and have a voice. That's part of the reason why I started off as a community organizer, was because I always believed that social change, progressive change, begins by people getting outside of themselves and feeling some connection to each other, because that's what gives people courage to actually move things forward.
I think
that was a very long answer, but it was a big question.
There was so much good stuff. What we've been calling it here in Canada, to kind of surmise what you're saying, and Carolyn Hilton's here, we've been calling it indigenizing our economy. we've been calling it feminizing and indigenizing our economy. And what we mean by that is we want to look to the people that never lost that mind, body, spirit connection to each other and the land. That's what we need to infuse into our economic systems. And that's exactly why we wanted you to be our first speaker for this new economy conversation, because you embody all.
And you've identified the problem correctly, then you can sleep with the decision, even if it turns out that things don't work out. When I made the decision to initiate the Bin Laden raid, there was a 50-50 chance that Bin Laden was there. But what I had confidence in is that we had analyzed it so effectively that, number one, if he wasn't there, we had a backup plan for how we were going to handle it. Number two, I had confidence that nobody in my seat could make a decision that was better than the one that I had made. So that even if something had gone wrong, I could sleep at night saying, I'd make the same call again. So that, I think, is the process that I'm looking at. I want a great team. I want the best data available. I don't want to hide bad news. I don't want to shade things to fit my reality. I want my reality and my analysis to fit the facts. Then I make a decision. And then once the decision's made, we set up a system to get some feedback so that if we were wrong about it, we're learning something at least about it. We can make a better decision the next time. But you have to be comfortable with some uncertainty, some risk, and you have to be knowledgeable that you're not going to get everything perfect every single time. Otherwise, you're going to be paralyzed and you won't make any decisions, which is what a lot of people do. A lot of organizations, whether they're nonprofits, business, or government, are so risk averse that essentially their process is designed to cover their ass and avoid mistakes rather than actually get something done. And that, I think, is that is probably the majority, by the way, of organizational decision making is designed just to let me make sure that I'm not in trouble.
For sure.
When things go wrong.
And that's how, when we talk about future skills, it's that transition. It's to start thinking the way that you just explained it, and it's to lead with that authenticity to say, no matter what the decision, I stand behind it, I believe in the facts, and I'm going to present that. So even if it's bad news at the end, you can stand up with dignity and grace and know that what you decided came from the right place.
Well, and I will say that one other part of the process, I used to tell my team, you will never get in trouble for having made a mistake or something not working. You will get in trouble for not telling me immediately when you find out it's not working or you made a mistake. Because I have to, that's an example of just getting good information early. I can't kick off a good process to solve the problem if I don't know the problem's there. When I first started, I think it was the first week, my defense secretary in my first term, Bob Gates, who I had asked to stay, even though he had come from the other party. I had great differences with the previous president about how we were going to prosecute the war in Afghanistan, but he had great institutional knowledge, was a man of integrity. So I sat down with him. I said, Bob, you've served 7 presidents. He had all kinds of jobs in Washington. He was older than me. I said, what advice would you have for me in this job? And he said, Mr. President, you should just know that you now are in charge of 2 million people and $1.5 trillion budget. The thing you can be certain of is that at any given minute of any given day, somebody somewhere in the federal government is screwing up. Which is absolutely true, right? I mean, it was, because even if 99% of the people were doing a great job, that meant there were like thousands of screw-ups every day. And so that was a given. But trying to create a process and a culture where when those screw-ups happened, we found out about them as quickly as possible and we could start addressing them. That was tough to do, but I think we did better than most.
I would tend to agree with that. I would tend to agree with that. I want to talk to you about climate. I think that more and more we are starting to get on the same page, which, it's sad that it's taken us that long to admit that we are doing irreversible damage to our planet and that is interconnected into our systems, into the way that we consume, into the way that we interact. And my question for you is not to solve the climate crisis. Letting you off the hook.
I was thinking, wow.
I'm not going to ask you to do that. But what I am going to ask is for you to tell me and tell us who you think needs to lead that charge. Because for so long, we're waiting for someone else to do it. We're waiting for the government to figure it out. We're waiting for the businesses to figure or sort it out. Who is responsible to start leading that charge? Is it the individual citizen? Is it the large organization and corporation? I don't think it's all government,
Well, that's absolutely true. And I think the answer is all of the above. Look, I'm not sure we're all on the same page at this point. I can think of a few people who are not on my page when it comes to climate change. Anybody who believes in science is all on the same page because the evidence is irrefutable. And it is going to require every sector to take responsibility for what is going to be an enormous challenge. This is not an easy one. This is a hard one. And the reason it's hard, by the way, is not just because we are inheriting a legacy of sending a lot of greenhouse gases into the air. The reason it's hard is because there's a guy somewhere in Canada, just like there is in the United States, who is a good man who has to drive 50 miles every day to his job and to support his family. And he's got an old pickup truck, and he can't afford a Prius. There's no mass transit to his job. And gas prices matter to him because it might make the difference between whether or not he can save for his kids' college education. And, you can lecture him about climate change. But you know what? He's just trying to get to work. And if you are dismissive of his legitimate, specific concerns about supporting his family, then he is going to tune you out, regardless of the science of climate change. Much in the same way that there is some family in rural India who has no electricity and engages in back-breaking labor just to feed itself. And if some coal power